Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Christie. I'm the Chief Executive at the Sussex Chamber of Commerce. As we start to go back to the workplace, as some businesses have already started to go back and others will do so over the next few weeks, it's important that we consider and plan how we rebuild our businesses. We need to plan for the future. So we also need to look at how we engage with our current workforce, some of which may be on furlough, to ensure that they're still engaged and we're still having that communication with them. So there's that engagement, that communication, which is so important. A lot of people are struggling with Zoom calls and working from home, and so it's really important that we still do communicate with our teams. So I'm really delighted to welcome Paul Scrivens. He's the Commercial Director at Love Local Jobs. He joins me today for our webinar on retention, engagement and attraction. So Paul, just to help set the scene, please could you tell us a little bit about yourself and Love Local Jobs?
Yes, of course. Many of you may already know Love Local Jobs, but a quick potted history for those of you who don't, because I guess it kind of sets the scene for what we have to offer on the session today. So we were originally founded by a quite a popular local businessman called Gary Peters, who again some of you may be familiar with, and we launched as Brighton and Hove Jobs in 2010, and we got quite lucky in the launch, really, in that it was the year that Brighton and Hove Albion moved into the brand new Amex Stadium. And unfortunately for them, luckily for us, they lost their shirt sponsor at the final hour, which gave us this sort of phenomenal opportunity to have the Albion with Brighton and Hove Jobs plastered over their shirt for the first season. So when we set out, Brighton and Hove Jobs was intended to be more of a kind of information, advice and guidance platform that sort of championed, employability, good news from the local area and local employers with a job board element. But I think that sponsorship just sent the job board into the stratosphere, really. And Brighton and Hove Jobs quickly became Gatwick Diamond Jobs and Coastal West Sussex Jobs, 1066 Jobs. And then in 2015, we took the decision to pull it all into a regional super site for Sussex, which is the lovelocalJobs.com that we know today. And really we've specialised throughout that time to give local candidates access to thousands of job opportunities that are specific to Sussex, and in turn give local employers of all sizes, really. There's small independent one-man bands right up to some of the region's largest employers like American Express, just to give those employers access to engaged local talent who we can not only advertise their job opportunities for, but hopefully just make the local candidates a bit more aware of what they are as an organisation and what they have to offer. So 10 years on, we're still going strong. I mean, obviously it's more challenging today than it was 2 months ago, but the same for everyone. But last year was a nice accolade for us. We've been shortlisted for the best regional job board at the National Online Recruitment Awards several times in the past, but we actually won it last year, which we were really proud with, and that coincided with the launch of a brand new platform. And we also have something that I'll talk a bit about later on because it's relevant to some of the topics. We also have a community interest company, which is the Love Local Jobs Foundation, which in short runs a range of programs designed to help raise the confidence and career aspirations for local young people, and obviously takes advantage of the relationships that we have with employers through the job board to try and better connect those typically disparate worlds of education and business. So some of the programs you may have heard of are things like Be the Change, Take the Leap. Most recently, you might have seen a bit about Dare to Dream, which is a new program that we're doing with Jack the Lad, who was formerly of the Heart Sussex Breakfast Show before it went to a national format with Amanda Holden and Jamie Theakston. So that's a bit about us. In terms of me and what I'll try and bring to this, you can probably tell from my dodgy haircut, my original plan was to be the fifth Beatle, but that didn't quite pan out. So I kicked off a career in sales many years ago. And I got my first sort of take on sort of local because I worked for Friday Ad, which became Friday Media Group, for 13 years. And in my time there, I worked in sales management and was effectively one of the main directors that helped drive the transition at Friday Ad from being just a local classified paper into a range of digital businesses, classified websites, job boards for things like aviation and law and automotive, and also a range of web services for digital marketing, building websites, SEO consultancy, PPC. So I think what my time there really sort of tuned me into was the various and broad range of opportunities that are available to help local businesses really transform where they're headed. So, you know, when the opportunity came to sort of take that knowledge and then apply it to something like Love Local Jobs, it seemed like too good an opportunity to turn down to. And for any of you that know Gary Peters, he's a difficult guy to say no to as well. So the rest is history, really. So here I am. I'm looking forward to the session today. I hope you guys find it useful. And you know, if anybody wants to pick my brain further or speak about anything afterwards, then please do get in touch.
Well, thank you so much for being here today, Paul. As we've discussed, we're here to talk about retention, engagement and attraction in this brave new world, and amidst all the challenges that faced by us as well as all the companies as a result of COVID. So can you tell us a bit about why you've agreed to join us today and what you hope that the audience will be able to take away from today's session? Yeah, sure, Anna. Well, I think if you remember when you and I first spoke about it, I was a little bit mindful that there's just so much going on at the moment, and there's a lot of noise out there. And don't get me wrong, some of the online events that I've been part of have been excellent, and others not so much. So, you know, one thing that was important to me is I certainly didn't want to pretend to be an expert on COVID-19, because in my opinion, no one is. You know, we're all basically novices and starting from scratch and learning as we go. So I certainly don't want to kind of patronize anybody by pretending to be an authority on, you know, the times we find ourselves in. And similarly, I've been on others, certainly from a recruitment perspective, where they're just kind of peppered with, you know, statistics and graphs and line charts. And, you know, I personally don't think it's that groundbreaking to say that, you know, the volume of people applying for jobs as delivery drivers has gone up and the amount of people applying for jobs in hospitality has gone down. You know, I think there's a lot of kind of obvious stuff out there. But I guess what I'm hoping to share and what I hope is of value to the people that are joining us today is, I guess, just an insight into some of our own experiences through this, not just as a job board, but, you know, from the foundation side, because I think there's some interesting parallels there that hopefully you guys will find useful. Also, you know, as an employer, we have our own team, and also obviously as somebody that works pretty closely with a wide network of local employers, big and small. So, you know, my hope is that by sharing some of those anecdotes, I can provide, you know, a bit of reassurance, a bit of advice, a bit of guidance, you know, a few takeaways, maybe 2 or 3 things that can be in the melting pot for later, that hopefully, you know, when the time's right, you can pull those out of the armory and they'll hopefully serve you well. In addition to the obvious health and society challenges that we're facing, there's also a significant economic challenge in front of us, because they're now talking about the potential of another recession, worse than the 2008. But I understand this isn't the first time that Love Local Jobs has had to weather a storm in tricky economic times. Can you elaborate on that a little? Yeah, I mean, it's quite an interesting one, really. So when Gary first launched Brighton and Hove Jobs in 2010, that was smack bang in the middle of the credit crunch. So, you know, you've got a static economy, companies weren't hiring. So basically everybody said he was mental to launch a job board in the middle of that. But I think the sentiment back then was based on businesses wanting to be ready for the upturn. And don't get me wrong, in the early days, Brighton and Hove Jobs was very much driven by the larger employers in Brighton, like Amex and Legal & General.
But despite that, I think it's a process that's healthy for everyone to keep in mind. You know, that their belief back in 2010 was that whilst they didn't need to hire right now, they would do in the future. And when they had that need again, they wanted to make sure that they had a head start. So the job board was initially used not just to list vacancies, because, you know, there wasn't a huge amount of them available at the time, but really, you know, to promote positive news stories and, you know, and events, information, and support for that local kind of employment community, that, you know, in summary, helped companies to showcase their kind of DNA as a local employer, a leading local employer. And of course, as you'd expect, you know, having done that, as things started to pick up, it meant that they had the pick of a much richer than usual talent pool. And I think we can take a lot of confidence from that. You know, from me personally, and everyone at Love Local Jobs, it's motivational for us to understand that survival now, you know, ultimately means that at the end of it, you know, there's an opportunity, you know, to go into probably quite a prosperous period as a local job board. And I think for employers, it's useful to know that it's very similar to commercial market share. You know, survival will mean at the other side of that there's a bigger slice of local talent, you know, to help them drive their businesses forward when the time comes. So, you know, I guess my advice is just to start thinking about the things that you can be doing right now to help show, you know, why you're a good local employer. And it doesn't have to be expensive or elaborate. You know, we live in a day and age now when, you know, access to information and the ability to get, you know, messages out there has never been more kind of readily available. So, you know, I'd recommend, you know, beginning with a mindset that focuses on some sort of point in the future where, you know, your business begins to thrive again, and work your way all the way back to now, and think about the things that you can do that will make all those people that, you know, may have lost their jobs, or, you know, lost their freelance pipeline of work, or, you know, their businesses, to make all of those people think that's an organization, or that's a leader, or that's a person that, you know, I'd like to be on the journey with, so that when the, you know, the bounce back comes, you know, and it will come, you know, it's something that you're prepared for and you know, want to be proud of.
And I know it's a really tricky time for everyone, and with staff being furloughed and with businesses, you know, putting a freeze on recruitment as well. Are there any positives or opportunities that you see for employers?
Yeah, sure. You know, as I've mentioned, that so we as a job board, we spent the last 2 years basically talking about recruitment being a candidate-driven marketplace. I don't know if anyone's heard that term, but it's, you know, it's the sort of label that makes you want to break your computer, because it's infuriating for businesses. You know, that they find themselves in situations where they've got a really good business model, you know, they've had success, they're having success, they've got the capacity to grow, but obviously, you know, they need the right people, and they need good people to be able to do that. And then they can't find them for love nor money, you know, so they have to go out, you know, and either pay top whack salaries, or, you know, use a headhunter, which obviously has finder's fees, you know, and often ending up with a pretty average hire, who they have to placate with things like bean bags and foosball tables and fruit bowls and the rest of it, you know, only for that person to leave 6 months later, because, you know, it's easy enough for them to secure the next gig. You know, and, you know, in recent years, there's been a shift in what people are motivated by. It's not been the sort of traditional kind of value basis, you know, of yesteryear. So you've got this bizarre situation where mediocrity in the workplace gets rewarded, while businesses that have all this potential are held back because they can't access that lifeblood of essential talent. So what's happening now, as difficult as it is for everybody, it does, you know, create an opportunity, because at some point the economy will stabilise, it will start to recover. You know, there'll be some sectors right now that are already prospering because of, you know, their niche suiting the current time, and others will emerge and evolve. So, you know, at the other end of this, you know, competition will inevitably reduce, because unfortunately, you know, some businesses, you know, have and will fold. We've certainly seen it in recruitment. You know, unfortunately, there's there's been quite a few recruitment agencies that have had to close their doors. So, not only will be that opportunity to acquire a greater market share because of the disruption, hand in hand with that, there'll be an opportunity to acquire a greater market share of that essential local talent that you need, to drive the machine and to fuel the bounce back. And having a talented workforce has been something that's been really difficult for a lot of businesses in recent years. So I think, again, with one eye on what the bounce back and recovery looks like, recognizing that there's an opportunity to acquire market share and people to help you capitalize on that, has the potential to be quite powerful. And I think another thing that's interesting with it as well is, my opinion is that, the people that you bring on in that scenario will also be highly motivated, because right now, instead of people being motivated by, all of the frills and bows and whistles, right now what people want is, just basic core needs: stability, security, the ability to be able to pay the rent or the mortgage. So, I think they'll be hugely appreciative of the opportunity, to start rebuilding their career when the time comes. So, I guess right now there's probably a lot of us that aren't being as successful as we'd like to be. But going back to my point earlier, if you can think about what success looks like on the other side, and work that back to the little things that you can be doing today and tomorrow and next week and next month and next quarter, to show all of those local people why your organisation, is a great partner for them almost to start, rebuilding their careers with. When the time comes, you could find yourself in a much more favourable position than businesses that were trying to thrive 6 months ago and just couldn't get the people for love nor money.
I agree, we need to be thinking about the future and focusing on that. And when it comes to the tone of voice and the messaging, I know that we found it difficult at times to get the message that we want, to get it across in the right way. So do you have any experiences that you can share on this?
Yeah, it's tricky for sure. We've certainly had our fair share of paralysis of fear for fear of saying the wrong thing. I think the first e-shot that we sent out, when it all kind of kicked off, we agonized on for days. And then in the end, I think the subject line was, we nearly didn't send this email, because I'd read an article in Marketing Week saying that you couldn't be more open and honest with people than saying that. But, I think the interesting thing, another anecdote that I can share with everyone from my time at Love Local Jobs is, I found it fascinating how there's a really strong link between the way that your corporate brand can influence your employer brand and vice versa. So I'll give you a nice example of that. We work with lots of different financial services organisations, and one in particular, an insurance company. They were quite open and honest about saying that there's nothing really that sexy or interesting about their products. So that they found personally that shouting about their people, and their culture and all of the things that they do as an organisation was a much better way to create brand engagement and loyalty than trying to plug their products. And obviously, simultaneously, by doing that, they're creating this image that makes it increasingly, attractive to go and work for them, and it's seeming increasingly appealing as a place, that people want to be spending their days and to be part of. So I don't think you can really underestimate the power of getting, the tone of what you're putting out right during this pandemic, because I think, it can benefit you commercially, it can benefit you from an employer brand perspective, and I think those two work in unison together, in a lot of instances when you get it right. So I think from what I've seen, and the challenges we've had and some of the campaigns that we've done for other clients, my advice would be, be honest in what you're saying. Always try to add value, and don't expect anything in return. And I guess I should probably expand on that a little bit because it sounds a bit vague. I mean, in terms of honesty, again, just as an example from our perspective, right when COVID-19 started to break and everything started to change, we saw a lot of businesses going down the route of, promoting a message of business as usual. So now that's a kind of commercial narrative, but bear with me and I'll explain where I'm going with this. So, to be fair, we did a few ourselves. I think from my perspective, I didn't really understand just how dramatically it was going to unfold, and felt this pressure to kind of keep the wheels turning. But when you think about it, it's not business as usual, is it? It's pretty bloody far from business as usual. And whether saying that is motivated by an element of defiance or naivety or arrogance or whatever it is, it's definitely not going to help you when the vast majority of people are hurting, and people are losing jobs and they're worried about the health and well-being of their loved ones. So yeah, anything but business as usual. So I think the way that you communicate at the moment, you have to be open and honest and understanding of what the situation is. And if anybody that's kind of trying to promote a positive message or is coming at it from a growth mindset, I'd applaud, because I think that's really important. I think we all need to have that in the kind of sphere around us at the moment. But I think if you're painting a positive message, you've got to try and put it into context and explain why you're trying to paint that positive message, rather than sort of glossing over, because people will be sensitive and will quickly see through the cracks. So whatever the situation, I think you've got to have a very honest and empathetic message. In terms of adding value, I think it's got to be genuine value. If you're offering something to people that they don't need right now, then don't offer it at all. I think you've got to try and find another way to help, because again, if you think about the recovery, it's going to build a far stronger relationship with somebody if you're giving them something that might be a little bit off-piste and a little bit outside of what your preferred business model and past revenue stream has been. But if you give them genuine value and genuine support, I think you'll really remember that. Certainly from my experiences in the last few months of being on the receiving end of that, there's definitely some people that I can't consider within my network that weren't before, because they did something really valuable that was much appreciated. And I think if you think about that, again, the relationship between the commercial side and the employer brand side, it's the same, because in the same way that you should be thinking about how can you support your existing and prospective clients, even though they can't buy from you right now, or probably can't buy from you right now, I'd encourage you to think about how can you support your existing and future talent, even though that they can't work for you right now. If you've got people furloughed, or it's people that you aren't in a position to hire now, but you want to be having a conversation with, where can you add value to their life? What extra support can you give them? How can you build a relationship with them now in a way that will garner that same kind of loyalty that we're all wired to think about doing on a commercial basis? Because remember, when that upturn comes, you're going to need those people, existing or future. And it's a funny thing, isn't it, for the people that are the existing one? We've got a few guys that are furloughed, and certainly on the event side, because there's just nothing for them to do. And I'm trying to work really hard to make sure that they certainly know everything that's going on, and they understand what's going on with the business, so that they're not dissolving into insecurity about what might be. But I mean, we can talk a bit about that further down the line. The final thing in terms of don't expect anything in return, there's that age-old expression, isn't there? There's no such thing as a selfless good deed, but I really think there needs to be, certainly now. And again, from our experiences, I think there's been lots of examples of that, where I think there's a willingness for people to kind of go out on a limb a bit more for others, and I think that has the potential to be real positive about it. But I think if you expect too much in return, at the moment it will drive you mad, because you just you can do the best campaign in the world, but it's very difficult to know what to expect back from it. And also, I think if there's a hint of wanting something in return, it sours the impact that you're aiming to achieve. Again, whether it's a commercial or an employer conversation, if people feel like you've done something useful for them and it's selfless, it's more endearing. So, for example, if you were to, to run a campaign where, aimed at people that were interested in learning about Google AdWords, and you were offering free training courses to your furloughed employees to give them something, developmental to do whilst they're twiddling their thumbs at home, and you thought it would be nice to open it out to people who, don't work for you, but think that they might be interested in, maybe they're people that have got to think about a career change, or maybe they're people that, going to have to take on more responsibility in their company and need to upskill, whatever the situation may be. If you offer that to people, but there's a catch about, you need to take part in this webinar, or you need to upload your CV to our portal, or, you need to, provide, a review for us on this site. If there's something that you're asking in return, then I think at the moment you're losing that opportunity for it to be that selfless good deed that has that really endearing quality that people are going to appreciate in the future, and I guess most importantly remember strongest further down the line.
In terms of honesty, just picking up on that point, I can see that there are some links being provided for everyone. So Katie from Love Local Jobs has also just provided a link about honesty during COVID-19 that Paul was referring to earlier. So please, if you do have any information that you wish to share, or any comments, please do put them in the chat so we can pick that up. Just following on from that, there's lots of news at the moment, lots of information about the recovery and going back to work and back to business. So what advice can you give to employers who may not be hiring now, but certainly intend to in the future?
Yeah, I might have peaked too soon, Anna, because I think I've spoken about this quite a lot. But I mean, I do really think that engaging with future talent now is a big opportunity, and it is a potential positive that could pay dividends further down the line. And those who do it well now, and can weather the storm, they will categorically find recruiting easier on the other side, which, to put into layman's terms, what that means is it means less time, and less money wasted on recruiting, which ultimately means more time and more resources to put into really driving, that opportunity and that period of recovery, where you can charge forward and get things back on track. So I guess I've mentioned a lot of the points, but I just encourage people to be thinking about that. And also, everybody's different, but for me personally, the way I'm wired, obviously there's the short term and immediate challenges that we're all dealing with, but I think it's healthy, for your own mindset to think about a point in the future that feels more successful, what that looks like, and the people that you need in it as well.
And I think it's important that we do start to engage with that future workforce, because there's going to be a big group or a large group of people that are feeling very unsure about their future. We're going to see an increased number of redundancies and unemployment and everything. So if we can start to look for the future and start to engage with our potential future employees, I think that's a win-win for both sides.
Yeah, 100%.
In terms of the more immediate term, most companies aren't hiring right now, but what recruitment advice would you offer them?
Yep. I think in addition to thinking about the ways to communicate with future workforce, you've obviously got to think about how you're nurturing your existing talent. As I mentioned earlier, you might have people furloughed, you might have people that are working remotely that have never done it before. You might have people that are, having to work reduced hours, et cetera, et cetera. So, for all the talk of, this shift from a candidate marketplace to something in the future where employers, have got much better cards, it's still a proven fact, and I believe will always be the case, that replacing key people is something that you'd rather avoid. I mean, if you go online and research it, there's endless stats, but it's, in summary, it's very costly, very disruptive, and comes with no guarantees if you lose key people, and you need to replace them. So, and that's if you get the right one first off. That's certainly my experience, where often you'll have to replace somebody 2 or 3 times before you get you know, the person that you want. So, you know, obviously right now everybody's anxious, you know, it's a flavour of the time. So I think it's healthy to kind of put yourself in the shoes of the people that work for you. You know, might they be panicking? You know, do they know, you know, what the situation is? Could they be thinking that they need to be jumping ship? You know, maybe are they struggling with the dynamic of, you know, juggling home and work life? You know, is it that they, you know, feel that they need to be doing more but just aren't able to? There's a whole raft of kind of, you know, emotions that people are going through. So, you know, I think certainly from my experience, a lot of it is just back to basics really, and just spend the time with people, you know, communicate well. You know, I try and have as many Zoom face-to-face conversations as I have to try and keep it feeling like we're in the office. If Zoom's not possible, then there's always the phone, isn't there? You know, keeping people up to date of what's going on in the business, in the industry, in the market, you know, pretty much anything that I can tell people about what's going on. But again, you know, also if you think about a lot of the things that we've spoken about earlier, again, there's a parity. You know, be honest with your people. You know, be honest and empathetic, and recognise the situation that's out there. You know, see if you can add value to their day. You know, we've spoken about, you know, courses for development, you know, interesting articles, things that will keep people, you know, interested and motivated and reassured in what they're doing, you know, and don't expect too much back, I think, is another important one as well. You know, I've got a friend who works for an events company, you know, and he's got his boss, you know, on the phone to him, hitting him daily for sales targets, you know, and it's just, you know, it's ridiculous, because I'm sure that person is managing how he's being managed, and that tends to be the track as it comes down. But, you know, if you're the person that's got that weight of expectation in front of you, when it's very little that you can do about it, it's probably only going to go, you know, in a negative direction. So, you know, those sort of three kind of mantras that I mentioned earlier, again, it's relevant. And I guess that's where the good news is, because, you know, I'm sure you guys are finding the same as I am. You know, although it's a completely different landscape, I still don't know where the time goes in each working day. So the good news is that if you're getting all of this stuff right in the way that you're going about attracting, you know, and engaging with people that might work for you in the future, there's a good chance that you're getting it right with the people that work for you now, you know, because it goes back to the, you know, if you think of the insurance company that I mentioned, you know, they're shouting about all of the good stuff that they're doing, the causes that they're supporting, the training, the development, the initiatives that they're running, you know, and obviously, you know, it's not just external people that see that, the internal people see that, and it helps to shape the conversation with the internal people that make them feel that, you know, they've backed the right horse, and they've got a good employer, and they feel good about where they work. So, you know, again, the two kind of go hand in hand.
Thank you. I've just seen that Paul has uploaded a PDF document, so thank you very much, Paul. I believe that you've been offering some free online courses to clients for a couple of months now. So thank you for providing that list. And Suzanne and Conrad, who we work with as well, Team Skills, you've been running behavioural skills training courses. What help for people who've lost their jobs would you suggest they can provide, i.e. interviewing skills? Over to you, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people, an interview could be something that they haven't done for years. You know, if you haven't had a job interview for 10 years, you know, the prospect of doing it at all is probably terrifying. But the prospect of potentially doing it over Zoom is probably even worse. So I think if you're in a position, you know, to be able to offer, you know, the growing number of people that unfortunately find themselves in a position where they've got to think about what their next move is, and I think that's great value. I think another area that's very topical at the moment, and I think it's really important, is just how people can manage their general well-being, you know, physically and mentally. I'm not an expert on it, but, you know, I've heard lots of people talk about it, and I know even before this kind of kicked off, it was a narrative that was very prominent with all of the kind of the big employers across Sussex, because I think it's something that, you know, my personal opinion is that the world that we live in, you know, gets faster and faster pace. You know, there's more and more going on in it. You know, I think the demands, you know, the need to be, you know, online and accountable and accessible, you know, is growing all the time. And I think in the workplace, people really feel that, and it spills into every aspect of life. So I think, you know, at the moment, with everything people are going through and all of the after emotions, you know, if you can link, you know, positive mental and physical well-being, I think that's a really valuable addition as well. And I guess, you know, another thing, it might not sound as my, I guess, thus far positive brand, but I guess helping people manage with rejection, you know, because it's going to be less opportunities. That's just a fact, you know. And so, you know, the ratio of people that are applying for jobs that are getting them, if you think about the shift from that candidate-driven marketplace, you know, to the situation where we find ourselves in now, it's going to be a lot more people that are getting told no, or not even getting a response. So I think helping people to understand ways that they can deal with that, you know, and what they can take from that, you know, and how they can turn that into a step forward rather than, you know, rather than digesting it as a step backwards. I think that's probably pretty valuable.
I think also maybe things like presentation skills, because going back to the point that Paul made, a lot of people may not have looked at their CV or whatever for the last 10 years or so. So maybe presentation skills, but how to present yourself on Zoom, how to use Zoom and how to interact with your employer or potential employer. Those types of skills might be useful, might be helpful as well.
Yeah.
I've just seen another chat as well from Jane Smith at Moore Law Solicitors. Thank you very much, Jane. She's mentioned that she's been offering advice and assistance on everything from furlough to engaging with staff working at home, all free of charge. So please get in touch with her, and she's left her email address there. So thank you very much, Jane. Have you got anything else that you wanted to, I should have said to Paul, going back to Paul, was there anything else that you wanted to add, Paul? And then I'll come back to Jane. Sorry, Paul Hopwood. In terms of your courses.
No, I just wanted to say that I've been offering them free to clients. I'm not going to offer them free to all of you lot, as many as you want. But if anyone on the call wants one or two, then grab the PDF, send me an email, I'll put my email up there. You're very welcome to have one or two. And staff are finding it good at the moment because it breaks up their day and they can also learn. And if they can do it for free, then that's great for the employer to be able to offer that to their staff. And people are learning on all sorts of areas at the moment. Thank you.
And Jane, was there anything that you wanted to add to what you're offering at the moment?
I was just going to say that I'm really interested to hear what Paul's saying, because that's exactly what we're doing. Although we're actually quite busy in terms of clients and employment law work, we're trying to think about for our clients what things look like in the future and what may become the new normal for them. So we're doing a lot of things where we're trying to see what we can offer now to add value to them going forward, because there's a massive thing to be said about building goodwill now in these awful times, and it's actually been quite nice and quite uplifting to be able to help people, and you know, just do that where we can, really.
That's fantastic.
On that, both Paul and Jane, if you want to share any of that content with me, you know, something that we've been trying to do is anything that's particularly of interest to the candidate audience, or our employer network. We've been posting articles on Love Local Jobs free of charge while this has been going on. So Jane, we published something from DMH Stallard about a month ago. I don't think we've had anything from a solicitor since then, so it might be a nice time just to have a kind of, you know, an updated article on there about, you know, some of the elements of support and guidance.
That'd be great. And yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I can see Katie's just put a post as well that Love Local Jobs have created a blog for candidates to help them navigate the digital interviewing process. So please do follow that link, because there could be things that we can all help potential candidates with as well as part of that process. So I'm just coming back to some of the conversation that we were having as well. We were talking about short term. In terms of long term in these unprecedented times, how do you see recruitment changing?
I think there's lots of ways it could change,
Yeah.
but I think one thing that lockdown's done for everyone is it's given us all sort of time to reflect on what's important to us. I think both from a personal and a professional perspective. And there's already lots of talk about flexible and remote working being introduced to businesses when this is all over, because it's something that, you know, was rapidly accelerated. You know, I'll give you another example. Again, I better not mention names because you never know who's talking, and they might not like me giving away trade secrets. But another company that we work with, you know, outsourced some of their customer service facility to a call centre in Glasgow, and they had a 9-month project planned to migrate those customer service workers from being office based to home working based, and they delivered that 9-month project in 9 days. So it's amazing what you can achieve when you're focused and engaged. But I think, you know, that's indicative. It's just, you know, what COVID's done is it's just kind of fast forwarded a lot of these things that have been a sort of, you know, a building thing that's been bubbling away in the background into something that's kind of more immediate and has to be dealt with now. So, you know, I think when this is all over, you know, there's going to be a lot of people that have probably been working at home maybe for the first time and that have really enjoyed it, you know, and when we're not in lockdown, you know, working from home and having flexible hours, you know, to provide a better work-life balance, I think that'll be something that a lot of people will really value. You know, and again, from an employer perspective, you know, embracing that rather than resisting that, you know, I think is an opportunity, you know, to create, you know, another positive engagement with existing and people that might want to work for you in the future. I think another thing as well that's very relevant for us, given, you know, given geography, is that I think people have realised how much family time they're missing, you know, when they're commuting, you know. So, you know, if you're spending 4 hours of your life every day getting to and from London, I think having work from home in this experience, and, you know, the best example from this is my brother, bless him. You know, he's got a 7-year-old and a 1-year-old, and he said to me about 2 or 3 weeks ago, he said, I didn't realise. No, he said, I'm experiencing things with Arthur that I never knew that I missed with Freddie, you know, which is kind of lovely and heartbreaking all in one go. So, you know, I think that's going to be a shift. I think there's going to be people that are perhaps reevaluating the trade-off between, you know, losing all of that time with their loved ones versus working more locally. And again, that could be a really good opportunity, because it's, you know, in that candidate-driven marketplace, you know, fighting the kind of shift of commuting has always been a challenge. And I think finally, as we've been speaking about throughout, you know, I think people will really be paying attention to how companies are dealing with COVID-19, you know, and they're probably just a series of kind of subconscious decisions that are being made at the moment. But I think, you know, the people that are doing good stuff and making a good impression, you know, I don't think that will be going unnoticed. And I think that will bear fruit further down the line too.
I definitely think we're going to see a change in terms of flexible working and better work-life balance. It's interesting what you mentioned, is I've got a couple of staff members myself who, being on their own at home, they're dying to come back to work. They just can't wait to come back to work, because you have that social interaction, you have that office banter and everything. So yeah, people are missing that. You don't get that through Zoom or just through phone calls. You just need that office interaction as well sometimes, don't you?
Yeah, and I think that could be really interesting for companies as well, because, you know, whilst it hasn't been forced upon us, there's been this kind of growing, kind of burning desire to, I'd like to work from home more, I'd like to work from home more, you know. And then actually I think a few people have had a great opportunity to try it in its most intense, rawest format, you know, and, you know, they might be able to draw a line now and go, nope, I thought that was for me, but that's not. So I'm happy there. But, you know, I think from employers' perspectives as well, you know, thinking about things like hot desks, you know, if they've got a more transient workforce where people are working from home and working in the office and, you know, rotating around, might be that they need, you know, that they have a lower requirement for space, lower premises costs, more of a kind of mobile, agile kind of workspace internally, which could be good for, sharing ideas and creativity and, people collaborating with each other. So, again, I think all of those things are things to kind of be excited and enthused about, because they're all opportunities. They're all opportunities to do something different with the brave new world. Yeah,
I definitely agree that we're going to see a shift in the way of how office space is used anyway. I see that there's a comment from Ria that she hopes to see access to untapped market where there may be an increase in remote and flexible opportunity. Was there anything else that you wanted to add to that at all, Ria?
Not really. I think it's just be interesting to see where, like, for example, my company is very traditional in the way it's set up. Perhaps we haven't had, opportunities which might attract talent that, need flexibility or remote working. And I think it'd be good. And I think it will be interesting to see how we may potentially have access to more skilled individuals where perhaps we hadn't offered opportunities before, that actually gave someone an opportunity to join us or to apply for us. So I think that'll be very, very interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I think it's interesting because everybody has been forced into this kind of intensive process of doing it. So I guess, for a lot of organisations, there's always going to be resistance to doing things differently and to working in a way that, is, perceived as being, more difficult to control and, know for sure that people are putting in an honest shift. But at the end of the day, everybody's been thrown into it, everybody. So, right from the top all the way down. So everybody's had the opportunity to walk in those shoes. So I guess a lot of the preconceived stereotypes about the shortcomings of working in a more flexible and remote way, there's a real life sounding board for it now. It's not a kind of, a sweeping sentiment. It's a factual experience for everybody that's done it. So I'd like to think there'll be people that have had a really positive experience that come back and go, do you know what? I think this is a really good thing for our organisation. We should embrace it.
Also, just picking up on a comment as well here from Jane about the legal perspective of flexible working. I know that we've got a strict policy on flexible working and people have to apply and go through a process, but I think we're going to have to see some changes and some flexibility. This is going to be very, very tricky for future employers in terms of how they can argue against flexible working in the future, which is, that's going to be really interesting, that one, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Paul, Samantha, sorry, let me just see, Samantha, some of your home workers have come to realise that don't actually enjoy working from home. Yeah, it's exactly the same with us. We've seen a couple that really do not enjoy it at all. So we're just going through the process of setting up risk assessments, making sure that it's all, they're happy with that so that they can return to work. So we could end up seeing some talent which is lost to businesses. And Paul's mentioned that on balance, he's seen that from his 60 odd clients that people are generally getting better benefits from some home working. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more, Paul?
I can do. I mean, so some clients are finding that where they have certain types of staff, they're getting very high productivity at the moment because people aren't being interrupted all the time at work. Yeah. And other people, obviously you're saving commuting time. There's a whole range of benefits. People are, a lot of people are actually loving it, I have to say, for a whole range of reasons. For some of the reasons Paul said about getting to know your family again. Other people aren't. So some of the lawyers, for example, their family departments are quite busy at the moment where people are falling out at home and so on. So I think, it depends on the person as to what benefits they get.
Definitely. I know you mentioned it at the very beginning, Paul. Oh, your screen's, you're still there. I thought your screen was frozen for a minute. I know you mentioned it at the beginning about the work that Love Local Jobs does in the community. And maybe if you could just tell us a little bit more about that, but also explain why you feel it's relevant to today's conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I probably should have said at the beginning, for me, joining Love Local Jobs, I think, as much as I was interested in transferring my knowledge from Friday Media Group to the job board, I think the ability to work and help develop the foundation was the deal breaker for me, because I think increasingly as a society, we're kind of wired to want to feel like there's a bit more kind of value and purpose to what we're doing, rather than it just being about spreadsheets and the day job, so to speak. So I think it's relevant to this because it's probably the thing that I can talk about in most detail that is directly tied to a lot of the kind of the points that I've raised at the moment. So just to give it a very kind of brief overview. So these programs, they're basically they're a mixture of conferences at inspirational venues like the cricket ground or the football ground, with inspirational speakers, outdoor pursuits to help build teamwork, one-to-one mentoring from people in the workplace, workplace visits where kids actually go out and kind of see behind the doors of these organisations that they'd never otherwise get a kind of a window into. And I think the things that I've noticed, firstly from our perspective, the galvanisation that I see amongst our team at Love Local Jobs is like nothing else I've ever seen in the workplace. And I think that obviously it helps that the foundation is about helping kids build a better pathway into jobs. So obviously that's a nice link into the job board, but I don't really think it's about that. I think it's more just about the experiences of, working on these kind of like really human values, like, giving kids happiness and giving them confidence and helping them realize their potential. That it's a powerful thing, and it makes everybody in the organization, feel really good about what we do. And it's a really nice kind of, complement to the requirements and responsibilities of all of our kind of our day jobs, if you like. So that's been my kind of first observation. But I think what's really interesting is when I look at the clients that we work with, typically businesses that support us will also get their people involved in those programs, and the way it makes those people feel, if you think about it from a mentoring perspective, you've got, a challenging kid in front of you who's having a tough time for whatever reason, and you've got to reflect on everything that you've achieved in your life, and put your best foot forward in terms of, what you do and, your career achievements and where you are right now. Then, it makes you look at everything in a really kind of glass half full rather than glass half empty way, So I've never known anybody that's worked on one of these programs that hasn't gone away from it feeling, really good about themselves, really good about the company that they work for, really motivated. And we get all sorts of anecdotal feedback from the companies that work with us about how, leopards have changed their spots and are practically, bouncing back into the organisation full of beans. So, at the moment, there's never going to be more opportunities than there are right now to extend a helping hand. So, obviously, if anybody wants to or knows people that would like to get involved in what we do, I'd love to have that conversation. But there's so much stuff out there. If you can find yourself, some sort of community engagement cause or project or initiative to get involved with, I think at the moment it's a great way to make you feel good, to make your staff feel good. It's something that you can shout about in a really positive way that helps you stand out, which is great for attracting your people of the future, and it's great for engaging the people that you have now. And I think there'll be loads of opportunities for stuff like that in the weeks, months, and probably years that follow as a result of this. So, from my perspective, it's the foundation is what gets the kind of the heart beating and the blood pumping for me. And that's certainly in line with what I've seen from the hundreds of people from local employers that have been involved in our programs. So if you can tailor something like that towards your strategy for making the people that work for you feel good and want to work for you and be engaged, and the people that might work for you in the future want to be part of that journey, then I'd probably recommend it.
Thank you. I know that I've attended one of the sessions before and one of the programs, Be the Change, and I just found it so moving. But at the same time, like you said, it was so engaging for all the young people that were involved and so motivating in terms of what they get out of it. It was really inspiring. So, yeah.
And that's a lovely thing. I think everybody gets something out of it, and from a business point of view, I think what a lot of people don't realise until they've done it. But I think what's interesting is any business that supported us, don't have the exact figures, but it's at least 90% retention rate for businesses that support a program, that stay supporting the program. Because I think what they don't realise until they get to the end of it is that there's a very definite ROI on it. It's not just doing something nice for the local community, you know, because of the impact it has on their people that are involved in it, because of the power of the narrative that it gives them to promote, which has a commercial benefit as well as an employer benefit. You know, I think they get to the end of that, you know, and they can see that there's a definite ROI on it. So it's not a load of time, money and effort into something that doesn't benefit the business.
Definitely. As you mentioned, I'm happy to circulate Paul's contact details, but if everyone's okay, maybe we can share the delegate list from today, and it will have everybody's email address if everyone's okay. If not, please just send us an email and we'll make sure we don't send your contact details out, or just let us know. Maybe there's time just to take maybe one final question, or I see a hand up. Ria, yes, you'd like to ask a question.
Hello, yes, just on that, on your community engagement, I've had some engagement with like local jobs, and we based our sort of branding, unique selling point on our sort of engagement in the community, and people enjoy getting involved and going out to schools and doing talks. What we found now is that obviously it's unlikely that the work placements we were able to offer and the social value opportunities that we normally do, we can't actually run, and it's unlikely we're going to be able to run for a long time because it involves a lot of, you know, one-to-one engagement, etc. And sure. We are now starting to sort of look at strategies as to how we can still, you know, be social, you know, give social value, but do that remotely. And I wonder if it's anything that you and your team have started to look at about sort of evolving your strategy to offering things slightly differently, but still provide those opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And it might be worth, I'm mindful of time, it might be worth picking that up separately, because that's quite a long conversation. But yeah, obviously, you know, we've got every single one of our programs has basically stopped this academic year sort of 2/3 of the way through. So we're liaising with the schools and the colleges that we work with about what we can do remotely now, and obviously, you know, what the new academic year looks like and what we can do then. The best recent example I can give you is we did a YouTube channel called LLJ Lockdown, and Jack, who had previously spoken to, I think, 7,500 kids in schools. It's just that, you know, each week we're just releasing some pre-recorded material from him when it all started, that just kind of tries to focus on one kind of key value, you know, whether it's teamwork or whether it's resilience, you know, just nothing too in depth, because you've got to remember the attention span of some of the kids that you're kind of aiming for, but just, you know, little sort of 3-minute pick-me-up videos, you know, with a message that resonates with that, and it's also, you know, a way to, you know, honour some of our kind of sponsors' commitments by keeping them going out as well. But yeah, maybe worth having a longer chat about that. I'd be happy to give you any help that I can.
Yeah, that'd be lovely.
Brilliant. And Katie's just uploaded some of the videos and provided the link. Just please, can you just join me in thanking Paul? It's been fantastic, Paul, really inspirational and insightful. I think, like you say, we need to plan ahead. We need to keep on engaging with our staff, making sure we are retaining them and looking to the future to make sure that we are already planning to recruit our future workforce. So thank you very much for joining us today for our webinar, and thank you very much to all the audience as well.